Cross country day. This is what we've all been working for and preparing for. There's so much to do when we get here today. We've got to walk that course. I sit in the loo and shut my eyes and will really ride that course through every single fence, every single tree. I'm going to turn out every single bump. I'm going to go faster or slower out. I know every blade of grass, and really to do that I need to walk it a couple of times. The first time I walk it is to see what the horse is going to see. The second time I walk it is to plan all my routes. And if I'm in a really important event, I'm going a third time. It'll be a 3-day event if it's important, and I'm going to walk exactly the route I intend to ride. But the second walk is where I plan all the different ways of walking various fences, because there's often lots of alternative routes. However, we're at a 1-day event. We're only going to walk it once because we haven't got time to walk it twice because we live too far away to come the day before. So this is what we're going to do. And just a quickie about warming up. Make sure you're out long enough to give the horse a 10-minute walk, unless he's just come off the show jumping. A 10-minute walk, some trot and canter transitions to get him going, some longer and shorter canters to get him really on the job, and a couple of 3 jumps if you want, just to get you going out of that show jumping rhythm into a slightly stronger rhythm. If you've just done the show jumping, I'm not doing much jumping. They know how to jump, and quite often the collecting ring is quite firm, not a very nice area with lots of people going in all directions, so I'm not going to do too much. Also, if I'm later in the day or early in the day and it's a sunny day, I'm going to look at the sun and see where it's beaming from and run my mind through the course and think, is there any fences that are directly into the sun? Because if there are, I need to do one of 2 things. If I can angle that fence to get away from the sunbeam, I will. If I can't, because the fence is followed by a skinny and a straight line and I need to be straight, and I'm going to be jumping straight into the sun, I'm going to give myself more room and go slower with just as much engine to give him time to get his focus in the sun, to get his dark glasses on, if you like. And that is the rider's responsibility. No course designer can design a course that is absolutely right and not into the sun for every single horse at every single minute of the day. So it's my responsibility, if I'm late or early, to see where that sunbeam is and to work out how best to avoid it on the fences that go directly into it. There's more accidents because of the sun, because people don't take that responsibility as riders. So that's something we must do, but it's not often that sunny in England. Okay, so we're going to start now. We've done our warm-up. We've walked around for a bit. Sometimes horses are better to come straight out the warm-up with their adrenaline up and go straight into the start box, in which case you have to time it well. Other times they need just a breather for 5-10 minutes and then walk over. And then the wretched bell goes and there's a hold-on course and all of your preparation has gone to pot and you don't know how long you might have to walk around for. Sometimes I get off. Sometimes that switches horses off and then I've got to get them going again. There's always an eventuality that happens that you're not expecting. That's eventing. You've got to be ready for all the things not to go to plan. You've got to be ready to improvise. All you want is your horse's brain and body on the job when you start. And you have to work out how to do that, especially if there's a hold-on course. So you walk down here, you say hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon to the starter, and the scorers are usually in the caravan nearby. I know you're nervous, but just appreciate the fact that they've given up their whole day for no pay for us. So just acknowledge them. It does go miles, and walk into the start box and off you go. By now you already know exactly where you're going. You've been through it in your mind sitting on the loo long before you got on your horse. You're feeling extremely nervous as you walk in here. If you've got a horse that's difficult to start, you might need somebody to lead you with a slip rein through one bit ring that they can just let go of one end and it'll fly out when the starter says go. If they're not too difficult, I don't walk in and stand for too long because I feel they might get nervous. I'll walk in as he says 3, 2, 1, and as he says go, I'm going, because I don't want to waste a second. Even if I'm not going to win, I want to ride an economic line and I want to be accurate out of the start box and not waste 5 seconds if I can help it. Starting is a whole area that can be problematical and is probably something that we should go into sometime, but for now we've got a good starter. Okay, first fence is close enough but it's an absolute beauty because it's running slightly up a hill, which means he will naturally come off his forehand and be balanced. I've got flowers in front of me, which is going to make my warm blood spook, probably help my thoroughbred lift into the air. But come what may, I couldn't have a nicer first fence. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set sail up here, not over fast, but really going. And I would expect his head to be up, looking. Remember, when their head is low, they can't see. The bottom half of their eye is what sees the fence. And if I feel him start to wiggle as he cottons onto the fence, I'm going to try my best to keep him straight and keep the engine moving. I'm not going to expect him to draw me into it. If he does, I'm really happy. But if he starts to scotch and prop a bit, it doesn't matter. I'm quite expecting that with my young horse. I'm just going to say, I don't mind, you can look, but you're not damn well stopping. Can you imagine the embarrassment of stopping at the first fence? So be on the case. Don't expect a magnificent jump. If you get one, it's a bonus. If you get a crappy jump, it doesn't matter. It'll wake you up and it'll wake your horse up for the next fence. Don't let it undermine you just because it wasn't a super jump. I'm really liking the feel of this. This fence is drawing me in. If I've got a bit of a spooky one, he might be going from side to side, but I should be able to keep him straight as I keep him coming forwards. I don't care what stride he takes. If he stands off, that's his lookout. If he pops in a short one, I'm staying in behind him so he can get over it. If he does a bit of a proppy jump, as he's in the air, I'm going to go, come on, let's go. So he lands running. Even if I'm not trying to get the time, I don't want him to mess and scotch about. So if he hasn't made a great job of this and he's been a little bit finger in the mouth, in the air, come on, let's go, land and go. Up to the top of that hill and then we'll see what we got there. So the second fence, which you'll see in a minute, there is a stick on it to stop anybody jumping it before the competition. It's a beautiful, gentle slope down, which actually helps me get him back on his hocks. He's had a bit of a run up that hill, starts to head down the hill. I'm going to help balance him as he comes down here. I'm going to expect him again to try and go from side to side, scotching, because he's probably still a bit green. He probably hasn't got going yet. I'm not going to go too fast, but I'm going to make sure that he's taking me into it. But I'm not going to be on a long, flat stride. I want to give him options, and if he needs to go in deep, I want to have a canter that has enough buoyancy in it that he can pop in deep, or if he wants to stand off, he can stand off. He may find the mottled roof of the church. He might find that scary because horses see in shapes, and that mottled roof is full of shapes. But it's done to actually give him a real vision of the fact that there is that slope to the fence. You don't know. Lots of horses will ignore that. Some horses will go, oh, splodgy paint, and you'll have to be really ready not to suddenly find you're stopping or running out. You never know how your horse is going to react. And one day he might find this easy, and another day he might come along and the sun might be a little bit different, or there might not be any sun, and suddenly it'll look different and he'll react really differently to it. So even when you take this the fourth time in 4 weeks' time, be ready for trouble because it's full of splodgy marks. Beautiful fence though, lovely kind face, low in front, boom. Okay. So as I rise up at this fence, I'm already eyeing up the third fence, which in our case for the 100 is the left-hand cart of the three in front of us. So I'm going to move in the air. I'm already thinking of moving him to the left so that I get onto the left-hand side of the grass track to come down on whatever line we decide is right to the third fence. So there's fence 3, and we want to get it square on, which means the wheels behind each other. And to do that, we'll look back at the fence before, and we'll see that the line brings us quite close to this novice cart. When we were up there at fence 2, it looked like the line was going to bring us more onto the side to the gorse bushes, but I think as I look back, and I look back a lot to get the straightest line is over that fence, fairly close into this novice. Now I'm square for this fence, which is, if you like it, the first question on the course, because it's a space underneath, it's a hole. And for that, I'm going to ask my horse to steady up a little bit, because I want to make sure that I have him on a type of quality canter that if he wants to have another look at that gap, he can put in another stride without getting so close he hits it. Some horses couldn't care less about gaps, others suddenly get a bit worried about them. There's a lovely block in the middle to give you a bit of a ground line, and when you get there, you'll find almost you're on rising ground, and it suddenly looks way smaller. It looked enormous back there for a 100. Now I'm here, I'm thinking, still big enough, but it's okay. So I'm perfectly happy if he stands off, but I think he'll probably throw in a little one. He might arrive on the right stride, in which case, hopefully, he'll just take off. But usually, I'm always there ready in case he doesn't take off. So I'm still in that position of being on the back of the seesaw, so that if he puts in a little one and gets really close, I'm still on the back of the seesaw and can keep my legs going, and he should be able to rock back and jump. So we've just had a lovely long gallop along. All this bit about going down the hill and helping him get off his forehand isn't really going to work for this fence, because it's about a quarter of a mile away, which is, it's really lovely to have such a lovely galloping bit. But as I come down this strip, I see fence 5 on my left, followed by a ditch, which you can't see yet, followed by the part C. So I've got to now tell my horse that he's no longer galloping down a lovely race course in a fairly straight line. I've actually got to gather him up and get him really between my hand and leg and ready to take on a coffin, even though the first fence is quite away from the ditch. So the S bend that I have to negotiate to get to that first fence is in my favour, because it makes me have to gather him up and slow him down and help him come off his galloping balance, which is usually on the forehand. Most horses gallop fairly on the forehand, and start to pick him up and help him sit down on his hind legs. And I want to do all that business here before I face the fence. So I've, if you like, wrestled with him and messed him about a bit while I'm not expecting him to concentrate on the fence, because there's no fence in front of him. He may easily sight the novice fence up there, but he won't probably make a beeline for it because it's too far away. And having achieved the pace I want, which is the show jumping canter, I'm now going to turn onto the fence. And I'm going to expect anything on my young horse. What's that suddenly come? I was looking at a lovely straight galloping line. Now there's something in my way. What is it? I need him not to be fast. I need him connected and with his hind legs working. I don't mind how deep he gets. The deeper the better. In the last second, I might feel him go like that when he sees the flowers sticking out in the front. The flowers that help him jump away from the fence and make a good jump, but they could, especially if there's a wind, it could actually make him go, oh, what's that? So I'm never going to think I've got it sorted. I'm always going to be ready for trouble, right the way until I land the other side. You can see there's a ditch wiggling its way through the couple of trees the other side. It's sufficiently far away not to really form a proper coffin, but it is a ditch, and I can see horses go to jump this and at the last minute go, oh, what's that black snake ahead? Which is why I need to be slow for this. If I come in fast, I think the horses will definitely break and maybe not get over it. So I'm slow, I'm show jumping canter, I'm powerful, I'm expecting him to stay together and pop in and pop over. If he breaks into trot, I'm not panicking, I'm keeping the trot small, and I'm making sure I keep his hind legs going, and I'm going to keep kicking until he lands, because he may break into trot because he doesn't understand what the black snake is the other side. Once I've landed over this, I've got to expect him to shoot left and say, I'm not going near that ditch. I've got to expect everything, and I mustn't fall off. Very happy if he just walks to the ditch, so long as I can get him to it. Very happy if he keeps cantering and jumps it, but I must expect a pretty rough ride. And if I don't get it, I'm the lucky one. This is education. He doesn't know where he's going. He's never seen these fences. He doesn't know the course. He hasn't walked it. Once he's in the air over that ditch, all my concentration and my two legs and my turning hands and legs and eyes are focused on part C, which we'll walk to now. So obviously the white things won't be here, and it's not a deep ditch, but it's a perfectly decent ditch. And a horse has got every right to say, what? So you've got to be really on your game, keeping him straight when he balks, saying it doesn't matter, I don't care if you walk in and out of it. You're not stopping, you're not speeding left or right. And he might do one of those huge jumps, which is quite often unseating, but you do have a bit of time before you get to part C to get yourself back in the saddle and wind up the engine again. But if you've managed to do part A and B, try and not let it all out the bag on the easy bit, which is C. But it isn't that easy because it comes very quickly on the turn. The turn is very quick after the ditch, even though the fence is a few strides further down. If this was a novice combination, both these brushes would be closer to the ditch. So being 100, it's giving you more time for the horse to understand the question and more time for you to ride the question. It's a very good fence, but it is only fence 5, so it's quite early, quite an early challenge. So with great relief at getting over 5A, B, C, we haven't got much respite before we come to the trachea, and it's off quite an interesting line. We've actually got to move our horses left to give ourselves room to get a lovely turn and a lovely straight line to the trachea on our right. So as soon as I've negotiated that, I'm going to move him across towards the bracken, and I'm going to get him going again because I want him forwards, and I will probably speed him up a bit just to get him back into the frame of mind of being positive in case he's got a little bit backwards thinking that ditch and the hedges. And then as I've speeded him up, now I'm going to steady him a bit because he's got quite a decent right angle turn, but I'm going to keep out to give him lots of room to get his hind legs around the turn and get him straight, give him time to see. Tracheas I love because they can never get too close to them because there's always a ditch as a ground line, but a lot of horses suddenly see the ditch and balk. So my job is to put him into show jumping canter now, so I've sped him up a bit after that just to get him forwards. I've got him on a lovely straight line, and I'm on show jumping canter because if I come in too fast and he suddenly sees the ditch, he'll use that speed and bang, plant me. So I'm ready to kick him as soon as he feels he's seen the ditch. You'll know when he's seen it because he'll start to do that. He's probably starting to do that now. And I'm saying it's perfectly all right, you can look, but you're not flipping, stopping. And I'm going to keep kicking maybe 3 times in each stride until he lands the other side of the fence. When I get there, very similar to fence 3, it's a really kind trachea. It's not very deep. It's got a lovely sort of leafy base. The fence is barely up to my tummy button. You couldn't get a nicer trachea, but from back there, slightly down the hill, it looks enormous. It's a very clever course because it looks way more frightening than it actually is when you get there. Cracking good fence. So we've come from the trachea, we've got going again, got galloping going again, because if they've had a little bit of a fright at the trachea, let's move. We don't have to jump this next fence fast, but we want to get them back into a positive frame of mind if they've a little bit like that over the trachea. I'm hoping that they've had plenty of practice at tracheas and they don't helicopter it, but if they do, just move them away, get going forwards, and then bring them back. But when you bring them back, make sure they still want to take you forwards. If you bring them back and they disappear between your legs, that's no good. Horse must slow down, still wanting it. So now you've got the most glorious fence, a great big hedge which is going to scare the underwear off you. However, the horses are going to love it. And it doesn't matter if you feel them a little bit like this coming in. Just sit behind, plug in, keep your leg on, keep those hind legs moving, keep the momentum. It doesn't matter if they get shorter and shorter and shorter, so long as you keep moving, keep kicking all the way until you land. Boom, 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 boom. It doesn't matter if they go to the bottom and take off close. This is not hard. This is soft. This is going to help them get in the air. So don't be frightened. It's built to frighten you because it's a big fence, but it's a beautiful fence, and the horses are really getting their movement, their rhythm going. And if you've had a little bit of a fright early on at the coffin or the chicane, don't forget to move them away and get yourself into a positive mindset for the next fence. If you start chipping away at your own positive mindset, you can be absolutely certain it will have that effect on the horse, the same one. His positive mindset will start to disappear. So be brave. This is why you do this game. It's cross country that's the heart of it. You love it. Get your big boy's pants on and ride, and don't expect him to stand off. Just keep him moving until you get the other side. So here we are. We've had a bit of another lovely spin actually down the race course. If we're not feeling terribly confident, let's get moving again. And now let's slow down because we're coming to the water and we want to give him masses of time to see the waters there. So we want to slow down to show jumping canter. But remember, when you slow down, you mustn't let them disappear between your legs backwards. They've got to still be wanting to take you forwards, even though they're in a smaller show jumping canter. Hopefully lots of time to see that there's water. Hopefully they don't have a thing about water, because if they do, you could have a spot of bother. Your idea is to keep the canter coiled, coming in, keep the leg on, and about 2 strides away, start saying you are going to jump this, you know, keep kicking, and I would keep kicking until you land, because if you take your leg off, they might suddenly stop. There's masses of room to land, but you don't see that room until they get there. So 8A, B is into the water, C is up the bank and away over the last element. So just spot 8A, 8B, 8C indicates that you can't turn a circle without getting a 20 penalties at any point. If they were separately numbered 8, 9, 10, you could turn a circle without being given a refusal. ABC, you've got to continue all the way through without deviating and turning left or right. So we've scrambled through the water in trot, canter, doesn't really matter. And now we've got to make sure that we come up the bank, turning onto Part C. They know what these fences look like now, and this is really quite small, a lot smaller than the first one. Just keep kicking, and at some point your horse will take off and jump it, and then move away from that fence. Even if you're not going for the time, move away, get him back into positive thoughts after having gone bub 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 through the water, and then if you want to slow down, you can slow down. So we've jumped over the beautiful fence, not too big a fence either, out, and we come sailing up here. The stick pile is right in my horse's eye line for a long time. I'm going to sit my shoulders up, which should put my calves in and help him come off his forehand. And I'm going to allow him to make the judgment where he takes off. But my job is to make sure I stay in balance, ready for trouble. I have the certainty that his hind legs are bum-diddy, 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 bum. And then if he wants to pop in a little one, I'll sit behind it and keep the hind legs moving. If he wants to stand off, that's his lookout. But yet again, it's another fence that looks enormous from back there. When you get there, it's a beauty. So we're always thinking of the most economic route, the quickest route. This is the first time we've really hit tracks, Tweezledown tracks, instead of glorious Tweezledown racecourse. And I'm looking, okay, yes, I want the quickest route, but I'm on a 100, it's not that fast. So now I'd actually prefer to have the best ground. So I'm going to pick the best ground I can here, which is usually the levelest. So the quickest route might be up on that humpy back thing there, but I'm going to choose the levelest ground, which is probably a little bit the center or to the right. So my eye for ground is always there. When I'm walking the course, I'm always looking for the best ground. Yes, I want the most economic route, the quickest route, but I also want my horse for many, many years to come. So I'm going to take good ground over the quickest route. So we've come up the track straight into this lovely open area. We've got our 10 and 11 quite close together. We're heading for home. So that's always an encouragement for a horse to be heading for home. But because he can't see the landing, because it's on the edge of a gentle bank down, I again am not going to be going too fast, so that he can put in a little stride if he wants. And I must be able to sit behind that little stride and keep kicking and keep his hind legs moving, so that if he has got very deep because he's looking, because he can't see the landing, I can keep him moving and get him to jump. So it's a show jumping canter again. It's sitting behind, it's keeping the hind legs moving. When I get to it, if I feel him start to balk, I'm going to keep kicking, and I'm going to keep kicking till I land. If I feel him taking it happily, I'll just be there ready to kick. You never can't be ready to kick. Once you get here yet again, you can see the fence has really got a nice landing. It's not very far down. And now I'm already thinking, gosh, 11 is quite a tight turn, and 11 is a little bit of a drop. So I need to get him balanced as I land. I need to have both my legs round so I can turn his whole body as well as his head and neck and take him towards 11. So we'll go there. So here we are, landed the other side, what looked a fearful drop, but when you get here, it really isn't at all. Like so many of these fences, they look fairly alarming, but when you get there, they're really not unfriendly at all. Now I'm turning, I've got the two legs around his body to turn his body. I'm keeping the canter slow. Remember, coming down that slope, they may fall onto their forehand, so I'm going to have to yank them off their forehand, keep my legs on to keep their hind legs moving. And again, very small fence, little bit of a drop, very unlikely to stand off when they can't quite gauge the landing. They'll probably run to this and just pop in the little one, and I've got to remember to keep kicking when they pop in the little one, because I don't want them just stopping and leaning over it. And as they take off, I'm just going to stay back and let my fingers open and let the reins run right through my fingers, because that's a reasonable drop, and he'll need his head and neck to be used as his fifth leg to balance himself when he lands. Beautiful fence, heading right towards home, very encouraging for my horse. So 18A and 18B, not a long way from the log before, and an offset double with a certain amount of distance in between, but it won't feel very much, especially as by this time of the course you're probably rolling on a little bit more than you expected, even though you may not be trying to go fast. Your stride has just got longer, so you've almost got to break the rhythm back a bit, just shorten that stride again, a little bit nearer the show jumping stride, and keep those legs wrapped round, because you want to get over the middle of this fence. You don't want them veering off left or right, because look how tall the brush is, and although it's very soft, that can really make them tilt, and it can tip you out the saddle. And also, if you ever get this stuff between your knee and the saddle, like in a bullfinch, it's really hard to stay on board. So I'm going to be accurate on my line, keep them absolutely straight, and be aware that B comes up jolly quickly. So if I see a long distance here, if I see a long spot, I'm not going to take it. I'm going to keep my legs on and ask my horse to continue keeping his stride short. If I don't see any stride at all, I'm much better off. I'm going to keep hold and keep my leg on and hope that he pops it, because when I get the other side, I've got a pretty tight turn for a young horse who's not yet very manipulable, and I don't want to start running off up the hill and not find that I can get over this fence. It's a beautiful fence, the same character as the one before, so they've seen that one, they should be fine at this. But the usual thing is, don't trust it, expect a problem at every single stride. Keep those legs on and enjoy and gallop away. So we've come up this lovely gentle hill. Who knows, where maybe our horses aren't that fit, maybe they're getting a little bit tired. So we've got to be sure that they eye up the right fence, because they may be looking at the intermediate and the novice fence. Make sure they've got their eye on the right one, and be aware it's very easy to leave your engine at the bottom of a hill, especially if they're getting a little bit tired. They are heading home. They might make you feel that they're not tired because they're heading home, and they might get a rather long, flat, not very powerful stride. So I would make sure that I'd done that awful word, half halt, just gathered up the engine and rebalanced the horse from his rather forehand gallop up the hill and got him more into the show jumping frame. The beautiful fence. It looks enormous from back there, like so many of them do, but when you get there, it's absolutely fine. It's certainly not a big fence. And the horse is totally able to see what there is. The landing doesn't drop away very much. It's a really fair fence. But a young horse's eye might be on the start, on the collecting ring, on everything that's happening, which is why I wouldn't just cruise around the corner like I might on an older horse and just sit up and pop it. I would make an effort to get my show jumping canter, get his attention on me, and then put it on the fence. So as I'm in the air over this fence, I want to be absolutely sure of my line to the last. We're so relieved that we're nearly home that this is where it can all go wrong. So the little fence in front of us, the red and blue one, I'm going to make sure I leave that on my right. I'm going to know that as I come up the hill. It's got to be very fresh in my mind where the line is after the fence. It's so easy just to go, oh good, I'm nearly there. So I'm going to make sure, I'll probably jump this a little bit left of centre. Now my last fence, you can see down there, beautiful brush fence towards the start. I want to be straight for that in plenty of time. So over I go, leave the red and blue on my right, and sit up a little bit because I don't want him straggling and falling all over the place. I'll still be out of the saddle in my cross-country seat, but I'll have my shoulders up, I'll have my calves in, and I'll be saying, come on, sit down in this gallop or canter or whatever you're in. Sit down, keep your balance. I don't want you doing a bad turn and scrabbling on the turn. I want a beautiful last fence to give both of us a lovely feeling of confidence. And I'm going to go right down to the strings because ours is the pink one, which is the left of the two. And he's already going home to the horse boxes on the left, and mentally he might have gone, being a young horse. So it's your job to say, hey, mentally, come back here. We've still got one more fence. And he might try and go sideways a little bit. So be ready, you know. I hope you're fit enough, because your trouble isn't over until you're through the finish flags. And now, having bounced off the strings, I've got a lovely straight line. I'm keeping the engine, I'm keeping the gathering. If I get a beautiful spot, that's just good fortune. I'm not expecting it, but I'm keeping riding the hind end, the hind end, the hind end. And if he runs up the hill and gets a bit deep, I'm sitting well behind it, it's okay. Beautiful soft fence, it's not going to have a problem. But I want to make sure that my young horse doesn't turn that corner and just stop, because he's going away from the collecting ring, away from horse boxes. And I'm probably a little bit excited that I'm nearly home and I forget to feel what's happening and react to it. Really react to what you're feeling under you, and don't just expect it to happen. You don't have to ride like a mad thing, but you want to make sure he gets it in his sights and he takes you to it and he pops over. And then off you go to the finish. And how you finish is important. That's when you can break a horse down. So let him roll down from his canter to a slower and slower pace, all the time keeping him balanced, not letting him flop on his forehand. And then I like to get off, loosen my girths, take my boots off, and give him the biggest hug. So, whatever's happened on your round, there's always another day. It may not have gone as you wanted, but gain from it some positives. What was good? What has really helped? And what did you learn that wasn't so good? Have a really good analysis of it, but always end your analysis on, I really rode that fence well, even if you can only find one. Because we're all human, we've got to be able to have that self-belief that you develop. And it's very, very easy to be crushed. It doesn't take many mistakes for us to feel we're not worthy of our horse, or we're not worthy of going out on that course. But counter that with, why do I do it? You do it because you love it. Hopefully the cross country is the thing you really love, which is why we're here on the Academy, because we want to help cross country become the phase that you understand the best, so that the sport will be able to manifestly develop the cross country and the influence it has. So remember, when you go out there, your horse has not walked the course. You may know every blade of grass, every turn, every fence. He doesn't have a clue. So you have got to tell him everything. Don't expect anything. and be aware that he's probably young or not very experienced, and he's going to be thinking of home. Maybe doesn't want to leave it, maybe he wants to rush back to it. The most important word of the whole game is enjoy.